Hi, I'm Akhil.
No.
Welcome to The Long Take. This week, we're talking about Babylon, the new Damien Chazelle movie, which sort of like basically the same thing happened in the US. It came and went, and no one really sort of like talked about it. But here we
Or
are.
they talked about it, but nobody went to watch it.
Yeah, like what happened here?
I mean, it's obvious, right? When you watch the movie, why it's not a box office play. Especially the times that we live in, which is very unfortunate. But I can't imagine anybody thinking that this would be a box office hit. Especially,
But it needed to be because like you spent
I
like
don't know if it needed to be.
triple digit money.
I mean, I don't know about that anymore. Like these movies only make a fraction of their eventual grosses and in theaters these days, because there's so many other avenues, and most audiences just stay at home.
It's sad though because like I mean he's made it on like a big scale, right? Like you can
It's huge, yeah.
Yeah, like and I was like watching it, I was like, oh yeah, this would like hit me a lot more if I was watching it on like I think I saw like La La Land on like an IMAX screen or something. So I was like imagining this like on an IMAX screen. And I was like, yeah, he's really put like the effort into it in terms of like vistas and all that, like shooting and on terms of location. But the sad reality is that he's like he's chosen a subject and he's chosen like an era and stuff like that, which like doesn't really cater to that level of like demand or whatever anymore, or ever did.
I would argue like just pre-pandemic, this movies like this were making money. But then, yeah, obviously like things have shifted since then. Like 2 months before this one, Amsterdam came out with like Margot Robbie.
Directly on Hotstar.
Here, yeah, it came out directly on Hotstar here, and it made even less money at the box office than this one. And they cost pretty much the same. Both are period movies directed by relatively famous filmmakers
with like packing in
huge
as
stars.
many people as they can.
Yeah. So both performed similarly, and I'm sure after that one came out and bombed, everybody was pretty sure that how this would perform, because that is quite scientific. Almost these things, but like box office ko chodo.
Yeah, I guess we should just like talk about the movie itself. Like I don't think like even if like there's no like word of mouth gonna happen here with this kind of movie.
I mean, again, see, I would disagree with that also. You know how back in the day, I'm saying back in the day is code for basically pre-pandemic. Anything that was divisive, people would go out and watch, right? I mean, it's difficult to say how people would behave in a hypothetical situation. But then there is a world in which people go and make up their own minds and come out arguing about what they've seen, right? And this is very much a movie that it's like Blonde, right? Blonde came out on streaming directly. People argued about it.
Yeah, I was also thinking of like, what was that? Mank as well, given like the old Hollywood and everything. Like,
although that was fairly well received, it was like nominated for Oscars.
Yeah, that was well received. But again, like streaming like dumb. Like there's no like it doesn't really generate conversation because people aren't trying to watch it. Like no one's trying to watch it in the same week, right? Like when things come in theaters, it becomes like a sort of like a semi-appointment viewing because you have to catch it in the first couple of weeks, especially in India where like Hollywood stuff disappears if you don't go in the first couple of weeks. So it's sort of, I feel like the conversation sort of gets pushed in, right? Like everyone has to watch it in that period if you want to talk about it. But versus with streaming, it's just lying around there, right? Like whenever you want to, like you just go and check it out.
Especially with something like this, which it almost has like multiple lives. So it'll come out in theaters and people will argue about it, or then it'll come out on streaming or VOD here and there, and people will watch it again. New bunch of people will watch it, and then they'll argue about it. Like in Banshees of Inisherin came out. All these movies, right? Inisherin, this year's Oscar stuff, like Fabelmans, they all bombed, right? Now they made money and bombed terribly. They made like $10-15 million, which is like pretty much decided कि यही है upper level of market for movies like this. Right, but all of them came out on whatever VOD, and it was like a resurgence, right? New people watched them, they started talking about them, which is the strange kind of situation that we are in, right? So yeah, multiple lives is what's happening. Streaming is dying in front of us, right? People like they're like leaking subscribers, all these services, because the boom is over, right? And people are like, "Kya ho raha hai?"
Yeah, that's definitely gonna happen. We're gonna we're in a phase now where we're gonna like make fewer stuff going forward. The peak of like content in terms of just like sheer volume, I think we've passed that.
I mean, especially like stuff like this, right? Which is huge, like you said. It's like designed to be watched on a big screen. Stuff like this will be like pushed back into theaters, given proper wide releases. The windowing situation will change. Like abhi 20 din mein you get to see whatever you want wherever you are in the world. That has to change, right? For stuff like this to have any sort of impact in theaters, as these people all want. So yeah, again we should continue to talk about like stuff around the
everything
movie.
but the movie. Yeah.
So what is your
I feel like it's impossible to have one takeaway because of how like sort of like almost disjointed the movie is in itself. Like it's not like it's not one thing. Forget like it's one thing. It's like not even like a couple of things, right? So it's almost like I feel like the only way to talk about this movie is almost like to take it like in a scene by scene way, not like actual scene by scene way. We'll be here forever, but like the highlights, right? Like sort of like what stood out, and sort of like break it down. Like why do these scenes exist, and do they like work or do they not work? So like, what's the one that comes to your mind first when you think of Babylon?
I mean, the initial like it kind of hits you hard, right? Like in the opening scene,
this is the movie. Like I was in a way like shocked that I was like, wait, this is a Damien Chazelle movie, because literally I think the opening 5 minutes, an elephant takes a dump and then a woman pees on a guy, and I was like, what movie am I in?
Yeah.
Which director made this?
Yeah, well, I mean, that being said, the elephant taking the dump is, I mean, kind of it's like a warning.
It's
almost
icky.
I mean it's icky, yes, but it's also like a here's what you're in for type situation. And similar to the camera inside the vulva shot in Blonde, I feel it's kind of it's telling you where you're at, right? In the larger scheme of things, you're getting pooped on.
Although I feel like there's a part of like Chazelle who like thinks this is funny.
Yeah, it's played for laughs for sure. Even the peeing part, the peeing is played for laughs, right?
Yeah. And I was like, when did Chazelle become like a toilet humor director?
Yeah.
But like, I guess this is the point we're at now.
I mean, like you said, the toilet humor is part of this 3-hour epic, right?
Extravaganza.
I would argue that Chazelle is in, he's doing an Adam Sandler movie here, yes, but he's also doing like a genuinely like a moving love story. He's doing like a war epic. He's doing slapstick comedy. He's doing horror in one scene. He's doing a lot here, right?
Yeah, he's probably doing like too much, I think. It's almost like I was thinking sometimes of like Chloe Zhao with the Eternals. I was like, I feel like these guys were like really like together when they have to handle like a couple of people and their journeys, but suddenly you put them on like a giant scale, like, oh look, here's an ensemble, can you deal with this? And they're like, oh no, we don't know what to do anymore.
Actually, I had quite a different experience. I kind of admired like how I mean, you can sense the effort, so I'm not going to say effortlessly, but it's like deliberately complicated and complex, there's the movie making of it. But I was kind of impressed with all the different things that were happening and how on purpose the episodic nature of it was, and yet how he managed to kind of stitch it all together. It isn't a linear, like straightforward conventional narrative, right? It's supposed to be like a ye scene hai, ye scene hai, ye scene hai, ye scene hai.
It jumps through like years and stuff.
Yeah, and it's all like set piece after set piece after set piece, right? Which is, when you combine them and watch them in sequence, it's hopefully supposed to make you feel something, right? Although independently you watch those scenes and you're you're either going to be like impressed with like the sheer skill, and yes, they're not like particularly emotionally involving, but I don't think they're meant to be in the La La Land or Whiplash or First Man way either.
Yeah, because those are very, like, as I said, like they're very like one character driven sort of pieces, right? Or one or two.
Yeah.
This is like he's trying to talk about the entire era itself, which is like a very big thing that's very ambitious.
Yeah. So underneath it, there's this love story which kind of threads along, like it's kind of connects everything that's happening. There's also like 3 different perspectives, although one is the point of view character, but there are 3 perspectives in this journey, which is also new. He hasn't done that before.
Yeah.
Well, it is like silent movies and talkies ke beech ka time, or the transition period. And when I first heard about it, a couple of years ago, when Emma Stone was supposed to be in it or something, I remember. It kind of, I mean, knowing Damien Chazelle is doing a old Hollywood movie kind of makes you imagine what it will be. And this is not that, right? Which is part of the reason why people are like, what the hell is happening? And I feel that a similar thing happened with Fabelmans also, because you hear the log line that Steven Spielberg is doing like an autobiographical movie about how he fell in love with movies, and you're like, oh, it'll be like this nice emotional, epic.
Yeah,
and
but
it turns out to be like this.
Got into it, I feel like Fabelmans is still still much closer to what like Spielberg makes than like what Chazelle makes with like Babylon.
Oh, I felt like,
to me.
I mean, okay, so my take on I don't know, I shouldn't call it a take, but like my reading of Fabelmans was very different. Like I thought it was like a very, very like dark and unhappy movie.
Right.
And like consistently, although melancholy is present in a lot of Spielberg's movies, but so is like sentimentality and stuff like that. This one I felt was just very, very, very sad, and almost like confessional, and this one is also in a way very, very dark and edgy, complete opposite of La La Land, which is like such a purely like heart in your sleeve sentimental movie. And then he goes and makes this, which is like the flip side of whatever entertainment or filmmaking as an industry. And then you kind of wonder what he's trying to say, right? And this is prior to the ending, the coda of this movie, which again is more familiar territory, right? So it's almost as if he's like in this conflict with what he's experienced as like such a acclaimed filmmaker, and what is expected of him, right?
I think it's also like, it's when you like start making a movie about this, like maybe like we went into it thinking he was gonna make one thing, and then as he sort of like dug into like what actually happened in the era, and he was like, oh, these are the characters I want to like talk about, these are the sort of moments I want to talk about. Like the movie just probably got darker itself because of the decade it's dealing with, right? Or the era it's dealing with.
Possible. I mean, there is like sadness of a similar kind in both these movies, right? Like the ending of La La Land is sad, and the ending of this one where Margot Robbie kind of I don't want to say abandons, because maybe she knows that similarly she leaves him, right? Manny. And then we see him with his family, and there is like this sense of what if. So that sadness is same. But then when the Brad Pitt character kills himself, that sadness is very different, right? That's tragic. But then there is that undercurrent of emotional sadness, including that scene in which the gossip columnist kind of very like weirdly and lyrically kind of lays it out to Brad Pitt wala character.
That was probably one of my favorite scenes from the movie.
Which is the mission statement scene, right? Which is the scene.
That's obviously that's the scene like he wrote. He was like, "This is what my movie is about."
And it arrives at a moment where probably people are wondering that, and then they're probably going to be like, oh, okay, fine, thank you. Now we get it. This is what you want to say, and this is, I mean, despite all the annoyance and the bitterness that you are projecting on the screen, like, this is what I'm irritated by with this industry and with this profession and with this art form. I'm gonna like adore it either way because it's larger than me or anybody that I work with or anybody that has worked in this industry ever in the 100 years that has existed, right? And that is a scene which is kind of telling himself कि भाई मुश्किल है, whatever, it's unfair, but then we are just pawns here, and that is why we kind of go on. And then it kind of doubles down on this thought when Manny watches Singing in the Rain at the end. He's like, in a different way, he's like, yeah, this thing matters, right? Which is what Brad Pitt also
like,
says.
It's splintered across like the movie as well, right? Like the debate of like, is movie high art or low art? Like Brad Pitt's character sort of like argues that probably like 4 or 5 times across the film. So there's like obviously a conversation happening around that, you know, like he's through like Conrad, obviously he can do that, right? Because like Nelly is just like a outsider trying to like make a name, so she doesn't really have time to like reflect on her industry. Manny is just trying to scale the ladder, so he again is like busy in his own journey. It's Jack Conrad's character is the guy who can sort of be that, you know, oh, what is this era that is like upon, and what is my place in it, and what does the industry itself mean? Which is like in a way funny as well, because he literally played the same similar character in like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, just for a different era.
Kind of, yeah. Which is also very romantic look at the industry, right? And it's not, I mean, I'm using industry as a broad term, but it's very specifically Hollywood. Like, it's not like the French industry, or it's not like the Indian industry. It's not just movies in general. This is Hollywood. Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is about Hollywood. This movie is about Hollywood. And it's very like rose-tinted almost in moments about it, despite everything, despite, you know, the poop and the pee and all the cocaine, you know. And that is the fun of this movie, right? Because it's so many things, and that's what I want. I don't want like a straightforward movie that tells you what to feel. I like the conflicted nature of this film.
I think my trouble was that it doesn't tell you what to feel, but I'm not sure if it made me feel anything on like a, you know, like a larger level. Like, yeah, sure, there was scenes, like I pointed out that scene between Jean Smart and Brad Pitt, like that makes me feel, you know, the stuff somewhere else, like which like sort of works here and there. But like on the larger, like, you know, the extended scene, that party scene, not the first one, the one where she sort of, Nelly's trying to, like, her image is trying to be remade, like with Miranda Hurst and all those like upper elite, whatever class of people.
The
like
movie turns into a triangle of sadness.
Yeah, like I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't think it works in that sort of rich satire way, right? It's too sort of in your face for me.
Yeah, but then that scene feels a little, that's one of the few scenes where I felt like, oh, he's trying something and it's not landing, as opposed to all the other times where he swung for it, and then I was kind of impressed by how effectively he conveyed what he wanted to convey.
At least a 15-minute period where like Tobey Maguire shows up and we just enter a different dimension. Like I was like, am I in the Batman now? Like literally I was like getting those kind of vibes. I'm just like, we're just going literally underground. And then there's another underground, and there's a third underground. Like, what is happening? Is this even like a Hollywood drama anymore?
It's not, right? It's supposed to be like this impressionistic kind of hell. It's Dante's Inferno, right? He's taking, but that is so here's my like take on this movie. I feel it's like very similar to a war film, and why I say that is because obviously a lot of filmmakers, when they describe making movies, they say it's like going to war, right? But it rarely ever is. You know, like Drishyam 2 is not going to war.
Yeah, and like that, a lot of people say that, and when like they've never experienced war, right? Like at least a filmmaker said this like 70 years ago. Some of them had actually gone to war, so I would be like, okay, okay, like I'm fine. Like if you're saying it, you know, but like now we're living in the longest peacetime ever known to mankind. And I'm just like, can we stop like using such big words?
But see, with this one, I mean, there is obviously like a war sequence at the film in the movie, which kind of the parallels are funny because what's happening on screen is similar to what's happening, what's happening behind the scenes of like the making of it, right? But then, broadly speaking, I feel like the Manny character is not unlike, say, the protagonist of All Quiet on the Western Front, right? He's someone who is so enamored with this world of movies, and he hasn't experienced anything right at the beginning when we meet him, but he's just heard about it, and all he wants to do is participate, right? Like the young soldiers back in the day, they were like, "Humne suna hai aise."
Yeah, he just wants to be part of something bigger.
Yeah.
Right? That's literally his dialogue.
Which is, like All Quiet on the Western Front. Like, I want to be part of this thing that I'm told is noble and great and grand. I want to be a part of it. And once he kind of starts participating is when he realizes that, oh no, it's not really that glamorous. It's not really that fun. You get pooped on, right? and people die, right, around you. It's difficult. It's hard. You have to make morally questionable decisions, which we see Manny make over and over again when the black trumpeter and all that, right?
Yeah.
He makes those decisions. And when he comes out, he's a very different person, right? Brad Pitt is like this old general, right? He's experienced. He knows what's happening. But then he knows, okay, I'll take this dude under my wings. But like, it's uncertain, right? What's going to happen? Like Manny essentially sanctions the deaths of Brad Pitt, right? In a way, by telling his bosses that sound is the future. That's like the nail in Brad Pitt's coffin.
Although like his character himself like is not trying to stand in the way, right? He's like, we need to find, like, before even Manny says it, like before the first time he brings him home after the party, he's like, we need to find a new dimension. Like, what we give audiences to, like, something bigger. And then they find it, sound. And it's like, he does his, like, he wants to, like, embrace this new, like, whatever format and this new, whatever revolution in the filmmaking. But he's just not good at it because he's never been trained for it.
Yeah. He keeps fighting, right? Until the moment with the gossip columnist. And that's when he kind of resigns. Like,
then he accepts his fate. He's like,
fate.
Okay, this is Mira, like, that's what she says, right? She tells him that you had your error, it's done now. And he's like, oh, okay.
But yeah, like in a normal movie, he would have had that conversation, decided that, okay, my time's up, and retired happily, right? But in this movie, he kills himself, right? Because that's the kind of, that's where it's all, like, every scene is pushed to that level, right? Nothing is like...
Yeah, like this movie is like dialed up to 11, like as much as it can in every moment.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of admired about it, right? Like on the outside, it's like you watch a film, right? And we watch great films and we watch terrible films, and then what we take away is exactly what we see, right? That's the extent of what that movie is, what's on the screen, right? Similar to all the wars that have been fought, right? Like, people are either free right now or they're in terrible, terrible countries where they're not free. But we don't know what's happening on the front. Like, we don't know what terrible things people have had to do to achieve that freedom, right? And that is why I keep thinking that this is his war movie. Like, this is what he has done. And it's epic in a similar way. And it's episodic in a similar way.
You want to touch upon, I don't know, acting? Or like something?
Yeah, I think that, see, Margot Robbie, though, star. I'm sad that, and in this one, it's very obviously like, here, like, watch me act, And it's kind of funny also because they have Samara Weaving, who's like actually, like, when you see like doppelganger listicles, she's there. And they've cast her. There's a lot of like winky casting happening right here in this movie. And I think Brad Pitt was that opening scene was Inglorious level broad comedy when he's talking in Italian to his wife who's dumping him. But then,
I don't know, third wife, fourth wife, lost count. There were so many coming in and going out.
And then towards the end, obviously, he plays a more like toned down, tragic figure, right? When he's capable of doing both Diego Calva I haven't seen before. Thought he was fine.
Yeah, it's almost like, I think, despite the two biggest names, I think what Calva has like more screen time, it feels like.
Yeah, he's very deliberately like, here's our brown point, like surrogate.
Yeah, here's the audience surrogate they can follow, right? Like, you are the outsider, this is an outsider. Like, you can't like relate to like Nelly because she's just like out of her head all the time. So when this guy is like scenes.
Yeah, I thought 3 of them were very good. And very difficult kind of things required. Like, it was how like it really needs like a very strong hand to be like, because obviously they're not shooting in sequence, right? So like, agar ek din you're shooting like 1950 ka scene, and then you're shooting like 1930 ka kuch ka scene, where you're completely different people, right? Kind of need to have a handle on what to dial up and what to kind of tone down, when to take the foot off the gas and when to kind of.
But that's reminding me of like that first Nelly's like first sound films like sequence, right? That was insane.
That was a great scene.
That was a very good, very done. It was just like, I saw that and I was like, I don't want to work in movies ever.
It's almost like uncut gems, right? That scene, because it's so like
it's just like everyone's on edge. Everyone just wants to go home right now, but nobody can actually go home.
It's like like the editing and the flow of it and the acting and everything is it's all.
It's almost like a mini like time loop happening, right?
Yeah, it's really funny. It's really well done, right? But then also it's like they're literally filming one line of dialogue, right? It's
and finally they're just filming. They're just making a movie. It doesn't, but the cinematographer dies.
A person.
Like this shouldn't be happening. And that was like, that's the, like when he tries to like romanticize something, right? Especially at the end. Like I think we have to talk about that crazy montage and what happened there. I'm just like, what happened again? Like, did he just like forget he was making a movie? Like, it just feels like a documentary at the end.
Okay, so I thought it went like full
Tree of Life.
Almost, actually. It went like Godard, right? Because the obviously the blue and the red pops in, which is very like Godard, right?
Yeah.
That is the obvious reference. But then just the abstractness of it is like, ye kya
the fact that a guy sitting in a theater in 1950s can now suddenly has access to all of film history. I think it's almost like it broke the, like when you're transported to a period movie, you sort of like, you want to be in that space, right? Till the end. And I think it shattered that. Obviously deliberately, like he's made that decision. It's not like a producer stepped in. This is his decision. And I'm not sure, like, it's sort of like the moment I saw Avatar, I was like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah, it was crazy.
Like, where am I?
But that's the insanity, right? Because it's almost like he is having an out of body experience in that moment, right? It's like, what was I mentioning the other day? Like the 127 hours ke end mein James Franco sees his future family that he does not have, including his daughter, right? So it's similar to that, but like it like similarly, it gives him reason to live. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's meant to be like this kind of out of body.
I think
situation.
It would have worked better for me if he didn't like show like real movies you've seen. Like if they just like if they made up stuff, like made it look like stuff we've seen, but it wasn't actual like footage pulled from real movies. Like I think that I don't like being pulled out of like in that weird sort of fourth wall break moment. Sort of like appreciate not like being shown actual moments from other movies, especially because it doesn't even gel with like, because like it literally at one point you're looking at him and you're looking at Singing in the Rain, and suddenly just like we start fast forwarding through film history. And the problem is, the other thing my problem was with that was that I'm not sure how many people will get how many references, right? Like he really starts like all the way back, and there's so much stuff in there. Like there was stuff I couldn't catch. So like most people will not catch like any of it until they reach like the Avatar, literally, or like Terminator 2 or something.
I suppose they'll get the message, right? They'll understand that this is like a montage of film history. I think
it's not enjoyable as much, I think, if you don't understand that you're going through the decades like that way until you reach like 9.
So which the flip side of this is also because maybe you and I would be like, acha theek hai, ye film emulsion process or whatever, wo chal raha hai, and here are like 5 movies that I recognize. Here's the oldest movie ever made, this, that. we are thinking of it more intensely than any random audience member would, and they would just take it at face value ki ye raha ek montage.
Yeah.
And because we do cut back, right, we don't end, the movie doesn't end
Yeah.
on with that montage.
Yeah, I think that was like good. For a moment I feared he was just gonna like cut to the future and be like goodbye. But he brings it back to the character, which I think is sensible.
Yeah, which is sensible, right? Because then it kind of brings you back to the reality of the movie, and it tells you what he has understood from that experience, and then that kind of conveys to you what you are supposed to take away from it, and then the movie ends.
It's also like a microcosm of like, this is like, we're talking about one transformation, right? We're going from silent to talkies. But like, Manny basically sees all of like transformations, right? Like all the stuff that's going to happen again and again, or every time the movie's going to change, right? We're going to go from like Ben-Hur, like super wide. We're going to go to like telescope, like cinema scope and stuff like that. We're going to go to 3D with Avatar. Like we're going to do VFX with Terminator 2. Like I think he's seeing like basically every transformation the industry will ever face in that moment. Basically, that's what it's more about.
Which is the tree of life thing, right? Which is realizes in that moment that वो तो कुछ भी नहीं है. He's like a tiny.
अभी तो देखो क्या होने वाला है. Yeah.
You're this tiny part of this epic cosmos, right?
Yeah, so it's almost like that ending. I think is almost like an ode to like innovation in filmmaking, if you can see it that way. That we're going to go through like transformations again and again, but film will still be there always. I guess that's the message.
I understand perfectly that this is not a movie for everybody, but then I do feel that some parts of it are kind of undeniable. Like you cannot deny that this person is probably more talented than 99% of other filmmakers working out there.
Yeah, I think that was clear like 6 years ago.
And he's just become more and more like First Man is not a conventional rocket person movie.
It's not a conventional biopic. It's a like when you're talking about like Spielberg and like melancholic, like that was his melancholic movie, right? And that is such a deeply like, just like the guy like is just so laser focused on like what he wants to achieve that he's ignoring everything around him.
Yeah, but this great subversion of that movie is that he wasn't focused on achieving this great feat for humanity. He was focused on saying goodbye to his daughter, which is where it hits you.
Yeah.
Right. And there's always that coda at the end of his movies, right? In La La Land, obviously, a great montage that happens, the sad one. And then there's the silent acknowledgement wala scene.
Yeah, even like in a way that's similar, right? Now I'm thinking about it, I think the La La Land montage and the way he comes back to the characters.
Comes back,
He doesn't leave you at the montage. If he leaves you at the montage, it becomes an ambiguous ending.
Yeah.
You can think, oh, this is the alternate version? Like, is that what the director is saying? But no, he brings us back to reality and be like, no. That didn't actually happen. That's just in the minds of the characters. Even this one, like, he doesn't leave us a film history lesson. Goodbye. Like, he brings us back to his characters.
Yeah.
Like, his versions are definite. Like, what he's making, he knows that this is how he wants to go. Like, he's not just like some directors like that, right? Some directors just leave you and be like, okay, you figure out the answer now.
Yeah, which is what kind of assures you that you're in good hands, right? Which is what tells you that this person was very clear about their vision. So he hits this crescendo in all these movies, and then he brings it in for a quiet moment, right? And none of each of these movies would be very, very different without those quiet moments at the end of just introspection, of just one or two characters looking at each other and acknowledging. Like First Man can maybe across the whatever glass, they touch hands, that scene is there. And similarly with this one, so there is like a voice here. There is like common themes that he keeps repeating. There is something that he's obsessed with obsession. And what is our purpose in this world? Is it to do something or to just sit around? Does it mean anything? Even if you do achieve the pinnacles of whatever capability. All these things are very interesting.
That's a fitting note to end on.
Okay.
That's all for this episode of The Long Take. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at thelongtakepod. You can write to us at thelongtakepod@gmail.com. Please leave us a rating and a review where you listen to this episode, and we will see you next week.